Good morning. Thank you again for joining us this morning. Up now, we have recruiting and retaining diverse talent across the industry. It's going to be led by Dr. Z.
Hi, everyone. First of all, my apologies. I live on the West Coast, so on my calendar it said 1 o'clock, not 10 o'clock. And, Google didn't change it. So, sorry, Google. You guys need to figure that one out for me. First of all, thank you all for coming. Thank you, panel, for being here. You guys are wonderful. I've met some of you and not some of you, but I wanted to introduce our wonderful panel today. So I'm going to try to catch my breath and figure out what's going on right now. So my name is Dr. Zabina Bhasin. I am a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I work in the multicultural DEI space. We create in our company in KidZ multicultural line of toys and mesh learning toys, which is mental, emotional, social health. I'm going to keep it really simple for myself, and I'm going to actually let the panel, because I always say to do someone's bio, you don't give them justice. And when you introduce yourself, you're always the best person to talk about who you are. So why don't we just go down and have a little introduction of who you are and what you do and where you're from.
I think you're good.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Courtney Oliver. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources at Paramount Global, where I support our Consumer Products and Experience Group, which is why I'm here today. I also lead HR for all of our Nickelodeon, our Kids and Family division, and a few other businesses across the company globally. I am a New Yorker, a mom, and I also sit on a few of our D&I committees across the company, one for Nickelodeon, one for Consumer Products and Experiences, and I also used to sit as a co-chair and lead for our Black Employee Affinity Group, as well as being one of the women who started our Women's Resource Group. So clearly I have a strong passion for DE&I, and that's why it's a part of my day-to-day and something I just do naturally as I wake up every day.
Hi, and my name is Dominique Mueller. I am the Senior Director of Inclusive Design and Culture for Target Corporation. Been there about 17 years. So really our work is really building that inclusive values into our own brands. I also am the sponsor for our Advancing Design Diversity program. And then outside of Target, on the board of Hispanic Outreach, Art Buddies, and Elderly Companions, which is very passionate in this space. First generation refugee from Vietnam, and I grew up in Ferguson, Missouri. So this is all just coming full circle for me.
Right on. My name is Mason Williams. I'm the global head of DEI at Mattel. I've been there for 14 years. I started off as a designer and then moved into this role 2 years ago. Really focused on leading with the idea that we put our people, our products, and our purpose first and foremost, and that's very important to me. I lead, I see kind of like govern all of our 10 ERGs globally, and it's been a pleasure to be a part of that and be a part of the DEI journey. It's something that I feel very passionate about in my personal life, in my professional life, and it's great to be able to see and affect change in some ways. So thank you for having me today.
Hi, this is Jay Dotson from Jazwares. I'm the Director of Recruitment and Talent Management at Jazwares. I've been with the firm since 22. This is my second toy fair. I got the pleasure to meet Mason last year at the Dallas Fair, and we got to meet chatting with students, different organizations. It's a pleasure to be invited to the panel. And myself and my team and the rest of the HR organization trying to bring in, continue to bring in diverse talent into our organization, and leading from the bottom with bringing in early career staff members through a fantastic internship program that one of my partners is here that helps to manage. And it's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be on the panel.
So I'm going to talk about why they probably chose me as a moderator. She's a doctor. What does she know about DEI? So as a child and adolescent psychiatrist, my specialty is bullying and trauma. And growing up in the United States as a South Asian in Southern California, diversity is very affected starting in childhood. We as kids see so much and don't really understand what diversity means. We just understand that we're different, right? And I think our communities today are looking for taking away the different and creating belonging and appreciation and inner community change. And I think the role of toys in our industry actually can lead that and do it very well. So, as a doctor and a researcher, I'm going to start with my first question. Research suggests that diverse teams contribute to companies' bottom line. How has your company integrated diversity, equity, and inclusion into an overall business strategy, specifically in product development and marketing as well? So I think I'm going to start with Dom because as I know her and I know what she does, I think you would be the best one to start off this question.
So with inclusive design and culture, for us, it's really, our mission is to really drive and create that awareness, the commitment and the engagement to grow inclusive values and attributes across all of our own brands. So pretty audacious. It takes a multi-pronged approach. And so when I think about how we need to tackle that, we need to think about what we need to do now to get us to the starting line. We need to think about what we need to do next to really help elevate all of our team members and our culture, and then future, what is that radical innovation and inclusion space? So within the now, what we've done is that we've stood up an inclusive design council, and this started in early, I think it was February 2020. And the idea is to not be risk mitigators, right, like downstream, but how do we interject inclusion upstream and build in as much inclusion as possible? So this group is about 37 team members across our enterprise, and they look at everything from products, packaging, experiences, upstream, and I'm talking about macro trend level, talking concepts and drawings and just ideas. And so if you bring together this diverse group across all these dimensions of difference, from race and culture, gender, sexuality, cognitive and physical abilities, and the aging demographic, they're all experts in it. They're also connected to communities, and they're able to build in as much inclusion as possible through that consultation. So the idea is if we build in inclusion upstream, we're not going to unintentionally alienate or exclude anyone downstream, nor does it need to become a risk issue downstream. We've also been building inclusive standards across all of our own brands. So when you think about commitments like from an environmental, like water reduction, forestry, chemical use, well, there's no reason why we can't do that from a social sustainability aspect, right? And we can take all of our products and build them inclusive attributes through all those lenses of those dimensions of difference. So that is something that we've been doing for about 2 years now. And just looking at now measuring the effects of that. I was just sharing with my peer this morning that like even in our men's apparel area, it's about 76% of the assortment is inclusive across attributes, right? Which is pretty phenomenal in being able to accomplish that in 2 years. So it's really building it into a part of what we do every day, into every assortment, versus, let's say, again, that afterthought, that risk mitigation piece of it. And then kind of that next piece of it is that acumen. We've been educating our team members on anti-racist approaches. We've also created culture guides with communities to help our team members get to know communities and groups through that curiosity, not through the market share or the sales volume lens, but more through like what are the nuances in a given culture? What does family and education mean? What's pop culture? What are the influences in that area? And it's that sort of kind of connection that really builds that relationships with the communities we serve, and that we should have more interaction with as we design with. And then, as I mentioned, the future is really around that radical innovation and inclusion. And usually when people think about innovation, it's not applied through that inclusion lens. And so we've been developing a lot of technology and IP through that space that you'll probably hear more about in about a year from now. Yeah.
Mason, I'm wondering if you wanted to take this question on a level of like making toys.
Yeah, so I think it's important to think about when we design toys or even just experiences for the employee, design with, not for. So meaning you engage people, and if you're designing something that is for, let's say, sight impaired people, well, you better go talk to people. And if we're talking about designing black hair for dolls, well, find black people to talk to, and we're right here. meaning that we're in the population of our employees. So you utilize your employee resource groups to think about using them as part of the design process. So that, what does that do? It makes people feel as if they're a part of it. I don't care if you're in procurement, finance, maintenance, it does not matter. It means that what you do is you include people, and what does that do? Makes them feel as if they belong, makes them feel as if they're a part of it. It makes it feel like the toy experience is everyone's. And that way you also build a stronger community internally. We start to learn about each other. We continue to grow, and we continue to retain talent. We continue to develop people. And, again, it goes back to the idea of, like you said, Doctor, it says like belonging, right? And then the idea of like inclusion. The idea of diversity to me is almost something that I want to see go away. I don't want my title to exist in 3 years, 4 years. I just want it to be about purpose and about the idea of how do we continue to contribute to society? How do we contribute to the growth of our people? And just overall, the experience of designing toys should be fun and should include people. So it's very important from that perspective.
I love that you said that, because the importance of first doing it with people rather than for people, and then also it's not even it's like normalizing it. To get rid of it, it's always going to be a part of our initiatives in some way or another. But when we normalize diversity and inclusive learning and living, it just becomes part of life, and that's what it is. So I'm going to have this question, actually, it follows up with what we're talking about when we're involving our employees. So how do the both of you involve the employees, especially those from underrepresented backgrounds, and shaping the DEI initiative for both your companies, or even in the hiring perspective for that? How do you bring those people in? And it's harder because you're like, well, we don't understand. Are they qualified? Are they not? Or is it just lip service? Yeah, either one of you. I would either Jay or
Yeah.
So, brilliant question, and it's kind of continue on, right? So it really starts at the heart of the company, who you believe. And so the one thing for us, kind of post George Floyd and everything, where everyone was just kind of rattled, like, what do we do? So one of the things we did was come up with our own consumer products and experiences diversity pillars. And so those pillars start with a group of people that support people and culture. Well, that's taking care of us internally. That's bringing everyone in-house to really talk about the team and nurture and educate ourselves first. Coming up with what is our perspective on inclusion that we want to practice what we preach inside of our walls, but also to our partners. And then we also have a pillar for industry, right? So how are we going to be the change leaders in the industry? We're seeing it from a corporate perspective, where consumer products and experiences is not the most diverse industry. You don't go to college and say, I'm going to come out and work in consumer products necessarily. So we're spending a lot of time with local schools, like we just did some Career 101 and CP 101 panels at the Rock Nation Entertainment School in Brooklyn, which is part of LIU, and just brought the kids into our building, in our space, had people from research, retail sales, our toy team, our apparel and our collection team, just sitting there and telling them what their job is, right? You could be a lawyer and work in consumer products, but who tells you that? And then the other pillar we have is product and industry, and that pillar has been doing brilliant work since it started. We've done work with Target because we had a talent in a show called That Girl Lele, young woman of color. So one of our young ladies who works on our soft lines team, she just dug in deep and was just all over Instagram, everywhere, researching Black-owned businesses. She found a company, Izzy and Liv, and she just sent them a direct message and said, I wonder if you want to work with us. They were like, they thought it was spam. But they finally answered her. And so we did do a collaboration, and that's how we got a clothing line in Target, because Target, brilliant partners that we've worked with all the time. And so we're aligned in the mission and vision on inclusion, and that brought that to life. And it's not always about if the launch is, making you millions. It's just about showing that it's possible. Right? And so we need these Black-owned businesses or businesses of color to understand it's possible. So what we're grappling with internally, the team's taking it on, and then bring it to the industry and our colleagues, is how do we then help these businesses sustain and grow, right? Because the amount of product you need to put on shelf in a retail store is a lot. And if I'm a little small-owned business, I may not be able to scale. So it's conversations like that. But the beauty of us is telling our employees ideas come from anywhere, and that is actually how you'll retain and attract. Your voice is important. It's value. Doesn't mean every idea you have is going to be a slam dunk and win, but it's going to be heard, considered, possibly debated. And then we'll see, maybe that won't work, but let's pivot here. So that's one way that we live it and breathe it on a daily basis. And so it's not just about doing what's right. It's really what's good for the business and how our business has to evolve. Just looking at the data of who the biggest consumers are, it is people of color. It is these diverse, groups, whether you're talking about gender or race. We are the biggest consumers and spenders. So we have to start creating the products and, using the packaging and everything else that's going to attract them to spend their money, hopefully over and over and over with all of the things that all of us do.
Jay?
So as a recruiter, having the opportunity to make it an inclusive environment is really what we're trying to achieve at Jazwares. And I think consistency is also very important, and to not kind of go through and to really put your money where your mouth is, or your opportunities where your effort is. So, reaching out and going to HBCUs and recruiting on campus. So we had an opportunity to go to one of my team members to FAMU in Tallahassee, and then also the only HBCU in South Florida, Florida Memorial University. We've gone there, tried to help educate, resume building, and giving them the opportunities that other more privileged populations are almost innate in those universities that are out there, and then bringing them in and actually having them work with us and go through internships and be given the opportunity to succeed within our organization. So I think the consistency is a big thing of going through any DE&I, and you've got to be there every day, and not just when it's popular to do it, but every day, and put forth that effort.
It's the youth, right? That's who we have to bring in to create for the youth. That's really what it is. When we have to look at them as our next generation, that even the younger generation is looking at them, what they're doing, because they're going to come in and see that. So we're kind of paving a way for this new alpha generation and beta generation that's about to come in. I'm going to go off of the similar question for actually all four of you. We all face challenges in our workforces, as managers, as directors. And this really goes with, there is a generation of these amazing millennials and Gen Zs out there. I'm not one of them, but some of you are. We have a lot of recruitment and retention issues when it comes to these programs. It's a different mindset. We're going into a different mindset in multiple things. How have you guys all faced those challenges and then overcome them to keep that retention, to keep it going, and keep the company and your departments working still? So I think we'll start with Jay on that side and come this way.
Great. Well, we have a fantastic DE&I organization within our folks, and actually just last week we asked for more members, and of having that for the entire population within the company. We are also, we could take it for granted that we're in major cities, so South Florida headquarters, Los Angeles, Bristol, greater Philadelphia area, and just rest on our laurels of thinking that these are very diverse populations of cities, and that we're naturally going to be able to do that, but we need to put the work into it and working through that. And then listening and allowing for the education of folks who don't know about API community, and being able to celebrate those times and teaching there, and Hispanic Heritage Month and Black History Month, and going through that and showing success stories. And when we find success stories within this industry, even greater of working through that, I think that's a big portion of where we are there. And then talking to students and talking to candidates, they want to know. They want to know what you're doing, not just within inclusiveness, but also through sustainability as well. And we have a sustainability area as well. That's a huge area of concern that our experienced hires and also our early career hires have as well, is working through that area. And then every employee in a company is a recruiter. And they need to go out there, and they're referring in folks and encouraging referrals, and the stickiness of referrals. We all know in HR that it's a fantastic referral source. And so it is a snowball effect of hiring folks, and then they will, birds of a feather flock together, I suppose, to use a cliche, and we'll bring in more, and you will then be able to market to everyone, and it's a win-win for everyone.
Mason?
Yeah. So there's a couple of avenues, right? I think the first is widening the funnel of people that you're looking at for talent, right? So industry adjacent, right? If you're a toy designer, why don't we look into the fashion industry as well? Why don't we look into other places? While you do that, then we're starting to open up like let's say we're lessening the educational requirements. We know that education is a huge barrier to entry just because of the cost. Right, so we start to look at people's experience, and we look at their perspective more than anything. The way I like to think about it is everyone knows what Dr. Scholl's is, right? Dr. Scholl's was a doctor who now had to tell us that walking on cushions is comfortable. Now, why couldn't I have learned that from Mr. Scholl's? You know what I'm saying? So like this is the way I think about it. So think about where you're getting people. How do we look at people? And then you start to say, well, how are we onboarding people? Because people need to be onboarded in a way of thinking about it from equity, right? So how is it that we're adjusting for? How are we seeing individual experiences and making sure that they feel welcomed, and then develop them and develop in different ways? Some of us, we've been around for a while, right? So you used to go through training and be like, sit through 2 hours of clicking a button or like why can't I learn in micro sessions? Why can't you meet me where I am? So that's I think the evolution means you have to look around, and actually takes awareness. Awareness takes consciousness. Consciousness takes effort.
Right.
And so I think that's like, and companies, that consciousness can be on an individual level, a group level, and then a macro corporate level. And holding ourselves accountable is what's important to do that.
Dom?
It's starting very early with that relationship. So a little bit what Jay was saying, right? So with advancing design diversity, we're really starting at the high school level and really seeing those students from a sponsorship, scholarship, mentorship, giving them all the tools and resources and tips, teaching them how to storyboard, teaching them how to interview, and really taking that relationship at that high school level through college or through whatever non-traditional path, definitely opening it up for 2-year or trade, taking it through that direction, and then through that first job, that internship, so that it's just this relationship that goes through their lifetime at Target or wherever they choose to go. And I mean, the name of that is exactly what it is, advancing design diversity, because we all need to hold hands and increase the amount of diversity in design and development and in product, because the cost is astronomical to go to an art or design school. So we need to do that together. And then once people are in, that's where it can't just be this transactional moment where then you're like, great, here you go, right? Like, it has to be like, how do you take them through the proper onboarding journey? How do you connect them with the right people, not just within the department, but across the enterprise? Because one of the reasons why I have been at Target so long is that it's the first place where I came where whatever you're good at, the question becomes, what else can you do? Versus pigeonholing you because they're afraid all of a sudden the brand's going to look different because you moved, right? And so it's about this continuous learning that you have to establish so that every team member has that opportunity to continuously learn, regardless in a leadership or an expertise or completely different category or pyramid. And then I would say the other thing that we found is that it's not so much about educating the Gen Zs and Gen Alphas, it's about educating the people who've been there a long time.
I love that.
Because learning styles, collaboration, and approaches looks very different between those generations. So when you have folks who've been there forever, and their ideas like, oh, mine, I got to shine, that doesn't work for the Gen Zs on our team, like Hasta, who I love on my team. And so it's actually a lot of that training and education for those established team members so that they know what collaboration looks and partnership looks like today.
It's not competition anymore.
I mean, agree to everything that everyone said, but it's also sort of the educational process of who we are, right? So part of your responsibility, especially as an employee of color, is to reach out. So it's those moments where you onboard a new person of color, doesn't matter who they are, it's taking the time to sit with them over coffee or just in your office, just kind of sharing your story. Because if you're sharing your story and then you're feeding off of each other and they're explaining how they got here and the decisions you made, sometimes it's just saying why I've been here so long and, where did you go to college and where did you do this? Because then they're being heard, they're being acknowledged, they're being seen, and then it's just a natural place because what we need to retain people of color or women or, people of disabilities, whatever bucket you fall in this story is you need that safe space to have somebody you can talk to. And I'm not saying we all have to be mentors or anything because that's a different topic. It's just being that person if they're confused, right? We've all had moments in our workday where something happened and you're like, that didn't sit right with me. Is it because I'm a woman? Is it because I'm a woman of color? So you actually need to, as the more senior person, reach out to the younger generation so that they know if they're confused or in a quandary, they have a safe space to go to with someone who works in their department, who works in their field, who can actually relate and help them really dissect what happened. So when I feel seen and heard, that excites me about the organization because that means they are actually valuing me, investing in me, and want me to be there. Right? At the end of the day, we have to tell this young generation because they do leave. And so I get concerned because how will our numbers ever shift? How will there be more at the table unless we're actually nurturing and talking and grooming each other? So I am watching this wave in every industry of young people and women leave at every level, and that's concerning. So my point is just kind of saying, well, why? What's happening? What are you experiencing? So that's really a big key, along with the onboarding and the outreach. But what are we doing as people who are already in the company, inviting other people into our table, our safe space table, so that they're having an equally good experience as you have had over however many years you've been with the company?
I say this all the time to parents when we're talking about kids, and it's actually very similar, which is we need to listen to our next generation. We're constantly hearing them, or they're hearing us, but we're not really listening to them. The generation has changed. Like you said, Dom, it's not about my idea or my work. So this goes into my next question, where I'll start with you, Courtney, because everybody's industry is a little different. You're at like a multimedia platform, you're at a retailer, Mason and Jay create toys. When we talk about goals and milestones in our company, right? Everybody has a different category for it. And it's related, and I hate to say this because I think DEI has become such an initiative and then we forget. It's like, okay, this is our initiative, but it's more than that. This is people we're talking about. This is kids we're talking about. This is creating platforms for the next generation. When your company's thinking about those initiatives, what is set? Can you guys give me a little bit about what's that thought process? You don't have to go into detail, but really about how are we making change? What are those initiatives that you guys are looking at to make real change, not just for your companies, your departments, but for this industry? What are those changes you guys are looking at? I would love to hear from each one, and I'll start with you, Courtney, because I want to hear about TV and movies.
So I have two sides of my hat, right? So I do support consumer products and experiences, but I also support Kids and Family, which more familiar to you all is Nickelodeon, right? And so the president of Nickelodeon is also the president of our Paramount Pictures and our movies. So everything does start, to your point, with content. If we don't create content, sometimes they won't have the toys to make. So, it really started, really with making sure from the research that we read, we do brilliant studies, I'm sure some of you have seen, like The Story of Me, which is really studying families today and listening to parents and kids and what they want and what they desire. So it starts there. It really starts with our content developer teams and saying we want all children and families to see content that looks like them and can relate to them. And, we've definitely done some bold statements. It doesn't always translate to product, but we have shows like The Loud House, really, where that's brilliant because they're definitely, if you really watch it, they're children in the family of all different types of disabilities, gender, equity, and all of these things, which is just brilliant. So there's that in the content. Doesn't always translate, but then you also have to be prepared for the slack. So one of the characters is a little boy of color. Clyde, he's black. His parents are two men, they're gay, and one is white and one is black. When we had the episode where the parents were revealed, that was very 50-50, right? Because part of the world was like, oh, absolutely not. And then the other part of the world was like, thank you. So you're dealing with this from content, which is complicated. So that's the content side of my house, where we do our best. Even with movies, you do your best to diversify the writer's room. You all can see what's going on with the writer's strike, but it's still important to diversify the voices at the table, which is why, to the other conversation, we have to really educate people that this is a viable career option. I love that everyone's doing everything with HBCUs, but let's do things with our community colleges. That's diversity too. That's inclusion too, because you could be first generation and go right here down the block to, the Borough Manhattan Community College. Who's opening the door for them to come into these companies? So we do have, with our brilliant corporate responsibility, we have great programs with them. We're just doing career development and ops. So that's one way we tackle it. And then from CP&I, we talk about everything from, our team on the creative side went straight to Getty Images. And it was like, your images are outdated. They don't represent today's, consumer and culture. So they did start the conversation with them and have them diversify, the image cards that we use for talent in our promos and ads. And then they realized that affects their entire building. So they actually went across the hall to our colleagues at MTV and VH1 and Comedy Central, and it became a broader initiative to really make sure when we're hiring talent that we're casting a wider net and not going back to the same pool all the time. So we do live and breathe it, whether it's between our pillars, but it is a business objective now. So just second nature. We know that's important. We know that we need diversity at all tables and inclusion. And inclusion is just your voice. It's just opening and creating the space for anybody to raise their hand in any room. And the beauty of our pillars is we meet usually once a quarter. Each pillar comes and tells us what they've been up to, but they're sitting in the room really with the president of the CP&E division. And she wants to hear from her employees around the globe about what's going on, what we're doing, and what the impact is, because our biggest goal at the end of the day is to work with our partners that we partner with, our licensee partners, is to change the industry. That is the North Star. We want to make sure as an industry we are part of the conversation of inclusion, and when we can help that happen, then all these other conversations in terms of product and bringing in new talent, that would just happen naturally. So that's where a majority of where we start, and then it just trickles down into everybody else's day-to-day.
So goal-wise, there are definitely corporate goals. We have what's called Target Forward, and that's really around how we show up for people and planet. So the people side of it is with what we do from a social design and social sustainability. And there's the devils in the details, where it's like down to how accessible is it? How culturally relevant is it? What's the efficacy of it? What about allergen within our food brands? And even from a value standpoint, right? When you think about this economy or marginalized communities, what can they afford? So down to the pricing. So it's like we really go through all those levers as far as like setting those goals from a product standpoint. What's a little tricky is when you talk about transformational change, and that could be within the acumen, behaviors, or even within the communities that we serve, then you need to start to measure it a little differently. So it might be, for example, with kids and communities, less about the educational scores, but how much the parents are showing up. Right? It's those transformational moments when those relationships and those connections are different. And so right now we're doing a lot of research into how do we measure that, knowing that we can start with the product side, but then when we get it into the hands of the guests, how is it improving their lives? And so that's the piece of it that we're also looking into. What do those goals look like?
That's great, because you're working with the customer now and then the guest. I don't want to say, but we're down to like about close to 5 minutes, so I want to give both Mason and Jay enough time just so you guys know that you can answer these questions. So Mason, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm going to take a different angle on this because I agree with what everyone is saying right now. But if we think about it as an industry, what are we doing? Like Jay and I are at competitive companies. But we both have a similar feeling, the idea that we should be working together. We should raise all of our boats, so to speak. So we want to see more representation across the entire industry. So, and then the competition is more about the great talent that we can have. So there's a camaraderie that's naturally there, and it's even you can see it on an individual level. Jay and I are friends, and that's important to me. And I don't think like, oh, he's from Jazwares, let me. I'm not trying to angle on nobody. And that as companies, we should think of that as well. So, in fact, I'm going to pass the mic to my man because we have 4 minutes left. But I think it's important to think about how we are serving the greater good. And then we think about how do we improve our business. And those things will happen, because doing the right thing and doing good business amplify each other. And I think that there was a moment in time when we used to think about it that's not true. Like, oh, if you do the right thing, your bottom line is going to drop. No, it doesn't do that. It actually improves. And so, and you're actually more innovative through that collaboration. So,
I know we said about raising the boat, but since we're in New York, it's making the pizza pie a little bigger. So that's my dad humor on that side of it. But look, I think that I love the collaboration. It's I walk into our booth, and please visit our booth. It's enormous. But
I'm actually coming, so yeah.
Come on over. So I walk in, and I'm the HR weenie coming into our booth, and this first happened last year in Dallas, where I got to meet Mason and Dom, and people are looking at me like, why is the HR guy here? Like, what's going on with this? Like, you're going to make sure that we're not partying too much afterwards and things like that. But no, it's fantastic education for us.
Yeah.
And last year, I saw buyers come through our booth and asking and talking with our brand managers and our designers about showing hair that represents the people who are going to be buying it, and of asking for different features. And then I go back to my team, and then I'm able to explain what the market and what our partners are doing. And it's a fantastic opportunity to continue educating, and then we're able to explain and push that through and find designers with portfolios that represent that. And then on the, similar to what Courtney said, on the licensing side of it, we work with great brands that are showing all sorts of people or in all sorts of figures within that, and then we were able to work with that and properly represent on that situation as well on the design side of it. So it's a real pleasure to see that continued collaboration. There's a lot more to go, and that's where that consistency comes through of always delivering every day, working through that. So it's really fun to see.
I'm very young in this industry. Our company is about 3 years old. We'll be about 4 in March next year. And I have to say something, listening to this panel and talking to all of you individually and getting to know you guys, this industry is very collaborative, very helpful, and doesn't happen in many industries. I came from healthcare for 20 years. Trust me, doctors don't collaborate at all. They don't. Unless you have a diagnosis, you have to work with a couple patients. But I love hearing that they want to help one another. And I have to say, when I came in, Jeremy from Jazwares has been such a mentor to me. Stephanie Bailey from your, Brian, we've talked about this. I was a Target 4 founder company, so I know what Target does to build that, So any of you who are looking to build in this industry, trust me, any of these panel members are wonderful to talk to. Anybody in our industry. The Toy Fair, as a board member, part of the Toy Association, I will tell you our university for all of us has actually educated and helped so many. So I thank all of you. I appreciate all of you. I'm grateful for Toy Association and Toy Fair and the university to have all of us here. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I appreciate it. Any last words? We have about 45 seconds, but no. Thank you, guys.